Not to mention that we're still in the ancient Shaper city, full of marvels waiting to be discovered.
This isn't a game, Iskram. We're at war.
I know, Tahar, and I will do all I can to help you end it. There's, one more thing I wanted to ask you. It's about your mother, about Andra.
Ask.
I'm not sure how to say this, but she was a Shaper. A living Shaper.
What are you getting at?
All tragedy aside, you have to understand how fascinating this is. A Shaper who survived through the Aeons. And as if that weren't enough, you even turn out to be related. I have so many questions, Tahar, so many questions. Iria said at the moment Andra and you melded, she made you see something. Fragments of her past. Now, I can't help but wonder, what was it? Did you see Mullendeer in all its former glory?
I didn't see anything. It's more like I suddenly have that sense of familiarity, especially here.
But that's even more exciting. She must have transferred some of her memories onto you. I wonder if that's part of this melding ritual. Look, Tahar, I'm not sure how to say this, but how would you feel about it if I examine her? There's so much we could learn from her, even if her mind has left her body.
What do you mean by examine? We're not talking about a dissection, are we?
What? No, of course not.
Why? What are you hoping to gain from that?
You mean apart from being able to examine the body of a living shaper? There's much we could learn. Maybe we could even find something that helps us fight Lacane.
If you really think it helps, all right. Do it.
You really just said that? Point B, Half. Thank you. I'll talk to Undergast as soon as possible. His knowledge will be a great help. It'll be a while before we can start, but we'll do it as soon as possible.
Ah, Corporal, I've found some new treasures. You might want to take a look at them.
Shields. Everything from copper daggers to moon silver swords.
Yes?
Axes, daggers, swords, everything for the weary traveler. pleasure doing business with you. Come again. I'm getting new wares by next moon's turn.
Huh?
Let's see.
What can I do for you today?
So, you're from the Windwall Mountains. How is the situation there at the moment?
A bit of a mess since the rebellion. Reynold Hallett, House Hallett's former leader, fell in the Battle of Greykeep. And now his younger brother Wayland is running the country.
You don't sound too happy about that.
Well, word has it he's too emotional and too inexperienced, and from what I've seen, the rumors are true. He cares more about old family feuds, such as the one between House Hallett and House Wolfgar, rather than the well-being of their lands. But I guess there isn't much we can do about it.
Let me see what you have in...
I had hoped as much. What do you need?
Pleasure doing business with you. Come again. I'm getting new wares by the next moon's turn.
Yes? Looking for some orcish craftsmanship?
So you made it after all. Not bad.
You didn't think I would?
No. That sleep you were in. I didn't feel that there was any life left in you. But then again, you always were damn hard to kill to begin with. That new energy inside you, though, that's a different story.
So you can feel it?
Oh, that's like standing in front of a bonfire and being asked if you can feel the heat. Yes, Tahar, I can. Anyway, in case you're here to ask, we're staying.
So you'll help me fight the Purity?
You make it sound as though this thing is somehow your responsibility. It isn't. That fanatic, with his idiotic stories of the All-Father's return, is out for all of us. Especially the orcs, or the other members of the Dark Races. So yeah, the Fire Wielders will stay.
That's good news. Thanks, Gord.
Don't mention it. Anything else? Huh?
I'll be off.
Corporal?
Tahar, ready to discuss the next steps?
You didn't tell me yet. How exactly did you get here? Weren't you in Greyfell when the Harbinger took over?
No, I wasn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. But we were on our way back the night it happened. As you can imagine, it was a hard choice to make. But eventually, I left my pride behind and realized attacking Greykeep with the little division I was traveling with would have been suicide.
So you fled.
We retreated. The rest is simple. We went to Iskander because we had heard the rumors about your army. There we met one of your scouts, and then the elven woman, Iria of Finon Mir.
Oh, she decided to let you in.
Correct. You know the rest. Your people were a bit distrustful at first, and I don't blame them. After all, they'd been fighting the Royal Army not too long ago. But eventually, they realized that we were on the same side.
Well, I'm fine with you being here, but know your place. This is not Greykeep.
I know it isn't. No reason to flex your muscles, Tahar.
I want to talk about Sentenza. His death.
Well, what is there to say? As I heard the story, he didn't leave you much choice.
So you're not angry?
For you defending your life? No. I never understood why he was so obsessed with hunting you down to begin with.
But he was acting on your orders.
Well, yes, strictly spoken, he was. You were a traitor. Or at least, that's what we thought back then. That witch hunt in Iskander, the battle at the Eye, that was his choice.
Why? Why did he want me dead so badly?
Well, I can only guess. But to me, it seemed as if he felt as if you had, I don't know, betrayed him. He always spoke highly of you. Did you know that? At times, it almost felt as if he considered you his own kin.
Well, if he did, he didn't show it very much.
That doesn't surprise me. Sentenza was never good at expressing emotions. You see, Tahar, in the end, both he and I are men born from war. Seeing people die at your command, hearing the widows and the orphans cry as a result of your choices, it changes you. You need to find a way to deal with it, and Sentenza did so by shutting off his emotions entirely. Or, at least, to the outside. But in the end, he always did what he thought was best for Northander. He saw the Harbinger's true face, even before he revealed it. And I brushed it off as his usual distrust towards anyone, which was, as you know, a fatal mistake. And who knows, maybe if I had listened, it would never have come to this.
Without the Harbinger, I'd be dead.
That's true. But this discussion isn't leading us anywhere, Tahar.
There's just one thing I still can't wrap my head around. How did Lacane become so powerful? How could he rally so many people behind him?
The big question, isn't it? In the end, I think it boils down to the fact that he poured salt into the wounds the Mage Wars had left in Northander. You see, it's not hard to rally people behind you if they are desperate enough. He just gave them a simple answer to a complex question, and the people believed him. Though I don't consider him a pragmatist, he really believes in what he says, that Aeonia will return once mankind has repented, which worries me even more. There's nothing more dangerous than fanaticism, fueled by magical power. Your father is the best example.
I am.
Good. Then let's call your companions.
Good. Now that you're all here, I'd like to plan how we proceed.
Tahar, I think you should allow yourself some more rest. You were in a coma for more than a month, and we still don't know what that melding actually did to you.
Isn't it obvious? It made her more powerful.
Yeah, but where does that power come from? What effect does it have on the human body or the psyche? We don't know.
It doesn't matter if I'm all right or not. We can't waste any more time.
Fine. Then go on.
Thank you. So, our objective is clear. We need to defeat the Purity of Light and save my mother. Angar, am I right to assume that Lacane made Greykeep his new base of operations?
Correct. It's the center of his power, which is both good and bad. It's bad because Greyfell was built to withstand any kind of ambush.
And why is it good?
Because it also means if we succeed and reconquer Greyfell, we'll cut off the snake's head. Once we kill Lacane, the Purity will fall. However, there's no point in fooling ourselves. That battle for Greyfell will be bloody, and if we want to have even the slightest chance of winning, we need to join the remaining houses.
Ultran, Hallet, and Wulfgar.
Yes. If we put this army together with theirs, we might stand a chance. Also, you should see if you can strengthen the alliances you already have, Tahar. I have a plan regarding that, so we can talk further once this meeting has been concluded.
So do I.
All right. So where do we start?
It's up to you. But before we can even think about arranging a conclave between the houses, we need to break that spell the Harbinger put on my sister Myra. Iskra, any ideas?
Actually, it should be simple. We need to find the one controlling her, take the rune, and, well, destroy it in the forge.
And who is controlling her? What if it's the Harbinger himself?
I doubt it. The manipulator has to be physically close to his subject, so it'll most likely be someone in Lady Myra's army. But your rune will react to another rune's presence, so once that person is near, you'll feel it.
Good. Then I have a plan. The Harbinger has taken up position in Iskander, between the Utran and the Everlight border. You know that place, Tahar. It's where your father started his rebellion.
The Loyalist camp. So, what's your plan?
We strike in full force and take the castle. He'll be forced to initiate a counterattack, and my sister's armies, the Utran army, will be the closest ones at hand.
A bait.
Yes, we hold the castle against the main army, whereas you, Tahar, and a small troop get behind enemy lines. You find the rune carrier and strike from the shadows. Obviously, you'll have to act quick. We can't hold against the entire Utran army forever.
What if killing the rune carrier won't break the mind control?
We'll just have to hope that doesn't happen.
All right. So we take over the castle, wait for the Utran armies to cross the border, sneak behind their lines and eliminate the rune carrier. And once Lady Myra is freed, we will gain the support of House Hallett and House Wolfgar.
Yes, though we'll need to take care of something else before that. But let's discuss this when the time comes.
Agreed. One more thing. This will be dangerous, and our original mission has been completed. In other words, if any of you are thinking of leaving, now is the time. Well, then we best get prepared now. I'll tell you when we head out.
Understood. Tahar, I'd also like to talk with you if you have a moment.
Corporal Tahar. A word, if you will?
Who are you?
Private Miller, Corporal. I'm from the Royal Army and came here with the Lord Marshal. We've captured someone who we suspect belongs to the Purity. He was seen in the deserted village outside this city, and he looks suspicious. He claims to be a simple courier sent to deliver a message to you, but we didn't want to take any risks. He's outside, near the entrance to the caves.
I see. Thank you, soldier. Dismissed.
Tahar, what is it?
You knew about my mother, didn't you? That's what you hinted at back in the forge before we set out to the Eye.
Well, the answer is yes and no. I had suspicions. Let us call it that. But they weren't enough to go on, and I had no idea your mother was connected to the Bloodburn.
Why didn't you tell me?
That I believe you might be the result of your father's experiments? That you're the offspring of some long-dead, forgotten race? Tell me, Tahar, what for? I mean, at best, you wouldn't have believed me. And at worst, it would have cost you your sanity. So no, I don't think I should have told you. I didn't know if these suspicions had any substance at all. And I would have been a great risk, especially back then when you were still part of the rebellion.
Where did these suspicions come from? Did my father tell you?
No. And he never found out that I knew. Your father... I don't need to tell you how meticulous he was, do I? That's why he always kept notes of his experiments and studies. I found one, a notebook. The story's actually quite simple. Your father had gone out to meet with Aelot Iskander, and had tasked me with cleaning up his laboratory.
Really? He never let me into his laboratory.
I know, and he wasn't exactly trustworthy towards me, neither. But you know Asamo, his mood was never what you'd call stable. One day, he'd think the entire rebellion had schemed against him. The next day, he told us that we'd change the world. It was part of his charisma, I guess. Sometimes I think the reason why the Mage Rebellion became so big was less of Isamo's magical powers, rather than his ability to create emotions in his followers. But, so I had found this small booklet on his table. It didn't look important in any way, yet I was immediately curious. I opened it and started reading.
What was in there?
His experiments in the eye. The ancient woman, as he called her. Your creation, these waxwork figures which he tried to infuse with life. It was disturbing. And at the same time, fascinating, as you can imagine.
Do you still have that book?
No, of course not. I couldn't even read through all of it, else your father would have noticed that I had done nothing of what he had tasked me with. And I have no idea where it is now.
I figured. That book, did it say anything about how this ritual worked? Andra said something about how the Shapers conceive differently.
I don't think it can be compared to how two humans reproduce, if that's what you're thinking. But as for the details, I don't know.
So, why did he, well, create me? My mother said it was to gain access to the Archfire.
Yes, I think that was the main reason. Though I couldn't help but notice a certain, I don't know, warmth in his words when he described his plans.
Warmth. I guess I should feel honored.
Yes. Sounds cynical, doesn't it? Still, I don't think you were just a tool to him. You weren't. Tell me, Tahar, knowing all that, how does it make you feel?
Marvelous.
Yes, I guess that was a stupid question. Either way, I think we both need some time to think. As I said, Tahar, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you earlier, but I simply didn't know what to do.
Yes?
Yes.
Ah, I was hoping you'd come by. That was quite the surprise visit, wasn't it? The Harbinger couldn't have picked a better time for his attack.
I guess you could say that. How's your injury? That blast from the barrier looked quite painful.
The blast? Oh yeah, sure. I'm as good as new. One of the perks of being a light mage. Tahar, I'm sorry. For everything.
What do you mean?
Well, what you discovered in that dungeon. I didn't see that coming, honestly. I mean, I'd always felt you were different, but an experiment of your father? I would have never guessed. And now that bastard Lacane took your mother. It's just... one tragedy follows another. Now I feel almost ridiculous thinking about my supposed problems.
We can still save her.
Yeah, I know. And we will. Blazes. How crazy does that all sound? A half-shaper whose mother's spirit has been stolen by a religious fanatic. If all this weren't actually happening, I'd think I'd be watching a bad play. Though you'd definitely be the tragic hero in this, and I don't envy you.
Problems are always subjective.
I guess they are. Tell me, Tahar, if you had had the choice, would you have wanted to know about your mother and how you were born?
Well, what about you? Your father also never told you who your mother was. Would you want to find out?
Good question. On the one hand, yes, I think I would. But then again, I never made any serious efforts to find out. I guess in the end it wouldn't have really mattered. She is dead, I know that much. And whether she was a priestess of the White Tree or a slum dweller, it wouldn't have changed the fact that she wasn't there when I grew up. But you're a different story. Your mother is still alive. And she's a shaper. I mean, doesn't that change everything? Would you really have wanted to know?
Probably not. You know, I had my set of explanations for who I was and what made me the way I am. Now I'm back at the start.
Yeah, I figured. Anyway, Shaper or not, it's good to have you back. Honestly, there were times when I was worried you wouldn't ever wake up again.
Well, it's good to be back.
Stoic as always. Anyway, in case you were wondering, I'm not planning to leave now. If you need my help, I'll be here.
Thanks, Iria. I really appreciate it.
Great. And now that we've got that out of the way, you should get some more sleep. You still look like a walking corpse. Don't make a habit out of it. I'll talk to you later.
Oh.
Corporal? Need anything?
I would still like to know why you stayed with us.
You're insistent, you know that? But to be honest, I've been thinking about that since you asked me.
Found an answer?
2 answers, actually. First one, you know already. I'm a fugitive. And if the Purity or Nortander got their hands on me again, it wouldn't have ended well for me.
I understand. What's the second answer?
Well, that one's hard to put into words. You know, there's one thing I like about you, Tahar. Despite all you've been through, you still fight. You're trying to make a difference one way or the other. So many in your position would have given up long ago, but you keep on searching, as the Harbinger said back in Greykeep. And I respect that. More so, I can relate to it.
How?
Well, there's just so much shit going on in the world, and yet so many people just don't care. They try to use the chaos to their advantage or just look away. There were and still are times when I found this hard to bear. It was also one of the reasons I spent so many years on the road. Away from the wars, the intrigues, the suffering, and all those bloody idiots. Out there, it's just different. And sometimes I wonder if the trees maybe know more about life than we ever did. They grow, they live, they die. If we'd managed to do just that instead of killing one another in the meantime, this world would be another place.
So you're here because you want to change things. Is that what you're saying?
Change? No. I don't see how this world could or ever will be changed. But at least we do something. And, you know, there was a time when I'd forgotten that this was even an option. You reminded me of that. And that's why I'm following you. Now, please don't look at me like that. You wanted the answer, and that was my best shot at it. Now, let's get back to less serious topics, shall we?
Could you tell me a bit about your homeland? Finn and Mir?
Well, it's not my homeland anymore, but yeah, shoot.
Interesting.
Sure. What?
You never told me why you fled Finn and Mir.
Fair enough. You've given me little reason to distrust you, so... Oh well. Let's just get this over with. I already told you about my father, how to him I had always been more of an asset. Well, after my father died, I decided to become a novice.
A novice?
Someone aspiring to be a priest of Ellen. I don't know why I did it. It was something my father had always considered a backup plan if an arranged marriage wouldn't work out. Part of it was probably because obeying my father was all I knew at that time.
Was it difficult to receive the novitiate?
Not for me. First of all, I was a good candidate. I was still very young, not even in my 30s, and I already knew a great deal about magic and healing. Secondly, I was, after all, pure blood. That helped as well.
What does life as a priest of Ellen look like?
Boring. Though not as boring as a Nortander monk's life. You are free to have family and to indulge in the earthly pleasures. Still, your life is devoted to worship. And for a priest of Ellen, that means healing the sick and preserving Ellen's greatest gift, nature.
But something happened.
Yes. In my first year, I fell in love. That crazy, hot-blooded, head-over-the-heels kind of love that the bards all sing about. The boy felt the same way, and for the next year, it was, well, it was perfect. It was the two of us against the world. Maybe you know that feeling.
And the priests didn't mind?
Priestesses. Only women are allowed to teach. And no, they didn't. Elves consider love to be a blessing of Ellen. Forbidding it would be near absurd. I have no clue where your monks got that idea from. Though, of course, that boy and I tried to, restrain ourselves when the situation demanded it.
What was his name?
Doesn't matter.
What was his name?
Doesn't matter.
Huh. And I guess your romance didn't end well.
You guess right. But it was more than that. You know, I told you how I always felt estranged around other people. I knew how to put on a smile, how to make myself fit in, but it was always fake. Shallow. With him, it was different. Dramatic as it may sound, I thought I had finally found someone who understood me. Then there was the novitiate. Despite all the time I sunk into doing the crazy things lovers often do, I never failed as a student. Or, no, let's put it another way. I was the best, in every aspect.
Which didn't sit well with some people.
No. And eventually, they made sure I felt it. They excluded me from everything, stared at me when I walked by. It hurt, yes, but I convinced myself it didn't. I've always been good at that.
But what happened?
My lover's friends started manipulating him. Telling him that I only saw him as my pet, that he was a failure, and that I only kept him around to feel good about myself.
That's toxic.
It was. And their seeds met fertile ground. You see, we novices all knew that only 4 out of 20 will be granted priesthood at the end of our training. And being a failed novice leaves you with a mark you'll keep for the rest of your life. It all looked peaceful on the surface, but beneath that it was an arena. And these other novices, they made sure my friend became aware of that fact. To him, I started being a rival as well. And do you want to know the biggest joke of it all? I didn't see it. The idea that, I don't know, that he would listen to them. That he would ever reach a point where he'd put what we had below his hurt pride and his fears. It never crossed my mind.
So, what happened?
Well, he knew I was curious by nature, so one night when we were in bed together, he suddenly asked me if I wanted to go on an adventure. Of course I said yes. So we snuck out into the cloister's courtyard. It was beautiful. The night was cloudless, and the old oak, our cloister shrine, had just begun to bloom. We made our way to the library building, but of course the door was locked. Out of nowhere, he pulled a key, grinning at me, and opened it. It was insane. As you can imagine, priests aren't known for being lenient towards these kinds of trespassings. We were risking our novitiate, and I didn't even know the reason. But I liked it. And we were doing it together, weren't we? It was exciting. He took my hand and we went to the High Priestess's office. We opened the door and went inside, and there he finally told me what we were here for. To open the grimoire. The High Priestess's spellbook.
Whatever that is, it sounds like that was a terribly bad idea.
It was. It was a stupid idea. And if I hadn't been so blind, so bloody naive, I should have seen it by then. But I didn't.
What did he ask you to do?
To open it and try to read one of the spells. He teased me. Told me that I wouldn't be able to do it. You know, saying it like that. It sounds so bloody stupid, doesn't it? But again, I was too blind. I laughed. I wanted to impress him, so I gave him a kiss. Opened the page and started saying the words. Long story short, I lost control. The spell was too much for me to handle and it misfired. One moment I was staring at the pages, the next one, the library was aflame and my lover was gone.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I was the one too stupid to see it coming.
How far did that fire spread?
Not far. It was put out before it could do real damage. But, of course, that was the end of novitiate. I was thrown into the cell of shame and sentenced to 12 years of polishing prayer banks and cleaning floors in the shrine.
But you never polished those prayer banks, am I right?
No. In the night after the trial, they still let me sleep in my chamber. Thoughtlessness, I suppose, or maybe they simply didn't care. I got my things, left, and never came back. So, here it is, the whole truth. No dark secrets, no assassinations, no necromantic rituals. Just a plain old broken heart. Compared with all that shit you had to go through, it almost sounds ludicrous.
It doesn't. Being betrayed by someone you trust often hits the hardest.
Yeah, I guess. It's just, I don't get it. How could he give all that up? I mean, there was something between us, you know? Something rare, something precious. But no, he threw it all away for his fucking vanity. But in a way, it's just a continuation of what I've always known. Wherever I am, I'm a stranger. People don't like me, and I don't like them.
For what it's worth, I'm glad our paths crossed.
Yeah, me too, Corporal. Me too. I'd like some space now. I hope you don't mind. Let's talk later.
Huh. Intriguing.
Tahar, how are you feeling? To be honest, I thought you were dead. While you were in that coma, I was unable to read or feel any thoughts and emotions emanating from your spirit. You were like a corpse.
I'm still trying to make sense of what happened.
Yes, it must be confusing. There is something else I would like to talk about. Maybe you have guessed it already.
Your friend. Now you know what killed him.
Her. She was a woman, and her name was Mila. But yes, that's right. Now I do. It was your mother. The Shaper.
You can leave if you want to. I'd understand.
I have thought about it. Ultimately, the question I asked myself is, can there be culpability if there was no ill intent? I've done many things which people might consider evil. But then again, I didn't do them out of malice, but because I needed to. Because feeding my urges is the only way for me to survive. I know the situation is slightly different from your mother's. She didn't know her song killed people. But ultimately it did. So the question is she to blame for Myla's death? And if not, who is?
Why does it matter?
It doesn't matter, but I would still like to know the answer.
Consequences matter, not intentions. She's responsible for the bloodburn, and her ignorance doesn't change that.
Then, theoretically, your mother is to blame for Myla's death. At least I know now what happened. That alone gives me some kind of closure.
Do you hate me now? Or my mother?
No. Hatred is an emotion I rarely feel, if ever. If anything, I feel grief that the person who was dearest to me died such a pointless death.
I see. And what now? Will you stay?
Yes, I will.
For what it's worth, I'm glad that I can count on you.
It's good that you feel that way. Let us talk later if there's something to talk about, Tahar. Thank you for your time.
Hmm?
Did you ever think about what would happen if the Queen never wakes up from her coma?
She will wake up. The healers claim that she's already getting better.
They've claimed that ever since that dragon incapacitated her.
The Queen has Hibernian blood in her veins. And as long as her heart is still beating, I will not waste any time thinking about something that might never happen. Though, of course, that is not to say that others at the court haven't done it. Most people believe that Queen Aelith doesn't have an heir. But that's wrong. She does.
Really? Who?
A cousin. I suppose you know about the Queen's problematic ancestry. The ability to give life has always been impaired in her bloodline, which is why she does not have any brothers or sisters. However, it was rumored that her uncle, Anno Aelith, left an heir before he died. A bastard son.
It's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yes, because the Crown took measures to quiet these rumors. Suffice it to say that Queen Aelith's supposed cousin is far from an ideal candidate for the throne. But I will not go into detail on this topic. It is irrelevant. And it will stay irrelevant, because the Queen will survive. I can feel it.
I wanted to talk about Leonon.
I had a feeling you would. Look, back at Greykeep, the situation seemed crystal clear. You killed 3 of your brethren, and General Noria openly spoke out against you. Similar to my policy regarding the purity of light, I can now see that I was wrong. But again, all I did was to take all factors into consideration and decide accordingly. It was all I could do.
You also could have used common sense. I risked my life to help Nortander back when I turned on my father. Why would I now suddenly start massacring Wolfguard soldiers?
You're right. I should have taken that into consideration. Either way, you've been pardoned. And more than that, now we're fighting side by side against the real scourge of the Empire. I don't hold any grudges against you. And I can only hope you feel the same.
I don't. After all I sacrificed for the Royal Army, you should have seen my innocence.
Well, I do now.
Tell me, Angar. Do you regret helping the Purity, now that you've seen their true face?
That's a hard question to answer, and you know it. On the one hand, yes, I underestimated them. On the other hand, back then, it was the only logical thing to do.
Logical.
Yes. After all your father did in the Mage War, the people were angry, desperate, broken. The Purity channeled and still channels these emotions. It may sound cynical to say that now, but if it hadn't been for the Purity of Light, something far worse might have happened.
Worse than a mage genocide? You let the Purity murder hundreds of mages.
Most of them were war criminals anyway. They would have been sentenced to death no matter what. But that is not to say that my decision to give the Purity of Light that much power came easy. I'm not free of self-doubt and empathy to her, even though it may seem that way to you.
However, I will not lie. Mages are a problem, and something needs to be done about them. If we don't, it is only a matter of time until a second Isamo Taha will appear and once again plunge the world into chaos.
But so much good can be done with magic. We aren't all evil.
I know you aren't. I fought alongside battle mages for all my life. But as your father proved, the damage only one deluded mage can do equals an entire division of Nortanda soldiers. But to return to your question, all I did was take every factor into consideration and decide accordingly. You did the same, more than once. I've heard of the trail of destruction you've left behind on your journey. Many people died under your command.
We tried to help wherever we could.
I believe you. But have no doubt that there are many who don't. What I'm trying to say is, there might have been a better way to handle things, but I did not see it. I did what I could, and even though it turned out to be a mistake, I have no regrets.
You said that you have an idea on how we can get more allies to fight the Purity.
Yes, I do. It's someone you're already familiar with. At least, according to your friend Iria. The Iron Falcons.
You want to convince them to join our troops?
Not all of them, obviously. The Field Dog are an even greater threat than the Purity, even if most people nowadays have almost forgotten about them. What I suggest is that we strike a bargain with them. They give us a small division of their elite keepers, and we provide them with twice the amount of footmen and maybe engineers to make up for it.
Engineers and infantry for a handful of knights? Is that really worth it?
It is. The Falcons aren't only excellent fighters. Their presence will also inspire our soldiers. They're living legends.
That's not what it seemed like when I was there. Highkeeper Aranor almost lost the tomb just because she was too stubborn to cooperate with the Deathmen.
Well, given that the latter now fight for the Harbinger, her mistrust wasn't that unjustified, don't you think? But still, you make a fair point. Keeper Aranor is complicated. But if what the elf told me is true, she learned her lesson.
All right. It's worth a try. When do we set out?
Whenever you want. Thanks to these Godstones, it won't take us long to get there. So I'm not expecting this mission to cost us more than a day, 2 at most. We should probably take some troops with us, just in case the canyon is still unsafe.
Fair enough. I'll let you know when we go.
Good.
Yes, Corporal? How can I help?
About you being an assassin. You said that you might be willing to tell me more about that at another time. How about...
I'm still not certain. The question really is, do you want to know? It might change something.
Then maybe we should leave it like that.
Probably.
About you being an
I'm still not certain.
Such as?
Your perception of me. It is your choice.
Well, I wouldn't have asked otherwise. Tell me.
All right. Where should I begin? Do you remember what I told you about that man who bought me from the Greyfell Bazaar? My owner? I also told you that after an incident, he discovered my talents and made me an assassin.
I remember.
It's complicated. The incident took place at a festivity. A lot of highly influential people were there, servants of the crown, wealthy merchants, nobles. My master knew all of Greyfell's elites. As always, at these festivities, it was my, and the other slaves' responsibility to ensure the guests' well-being. It must have been close to midnight when a man took me into his chambers. I'd learned to play along years ago, because resisting only made it worse. This time, however, was different. For some reason, that man wanted me to tell him that I loved him. I did, but he kept on telling me that I should say it like I really mean it. When I couldn't, he got angrier and started choking me. I had almost lost consciousness when I felt something break. I don't know how else to put it. It was as if my mind simply cracked open, like a crystal ball smashed against a mirror. And all of a sudden, that man and I weren't separate entities anymore.
I don't follow.
My magic, my dreamweavery, that's when it broke free. You probably don't know this, but the only way to become a dreamweaver is by shattering your mind. You are opening yourself to the thoughts and emotions of others, but you lose your own.
Wait, Dreamweavers don't feel and think?
No, we do. But it's differently than normal people. Me. The Iana you're talking with is the result of long work and studying of human behavior. I know how to blend in, to seem like I'm just like you. But the world inside my head is an entirely different one. Again, it is almost impossible to put into words if you're not a dreamweaver yourself.
What happened to the man?
I killed him. It wasn't a conscious choice, looking back. I even think that shattering my mind was my body's way of ensuring survival. I closed my eyes, reached out for the man's mind, and just crushed it. The man gasped, lost balance, and fell right off the bed. He wasn't dead yet, but unable to move, like a puppet rid of its strings. At first, I was disoriented. But then I felt it, for the first time. The urge.
To kill him?
Yes. To massacre him. Hear his screams. To see his life taken by my hand. I grabbed a lantern that was standing on a bedside table and knelt over him, and... well, you can picture the rest. To get back to your original question, that urge, it stuck with me. I think that the moment when my mind shattered and I became a dreamweaver was what unlocked it. Ever since then, I've found violence and bloodshed to be ecstatic, erotic even. And when I kill someone, like I killed that man, I feel alive. Actually, it's one of the few times I am capable of feeling anything at all.
And this is why you become an assassin?
Yes. My master introduced me into the craft. Probably because he knew that my dreamweavery had changed me. I wasn't just a slave child anymore. I was a weapon now. More than that, even. I needed what these new tasks my master sent me on provided me with. It had become a basic need of mine. Of course, I briefly considered changing my profession after my master had his accident. But I didn't. Killing is something I need, as much as a child needs the love of his mother. If I don't feed my urge, I will die. Not physically, but mentally. I just know this.
But is there no way to cure you? To return your mind to its original state?
No, there isn't.
Well, that was definitely not what I was expecting.
I can imagine.
What about your victims? Don't you ever feel guilt?
Once again, Tahar, I do not feel emotions the way you do. Of course I wonder if I made a mistake, but my reflections are purely based on theory. But then again, I don't accept just any contract. The way Leonider described you, you were a monster in human disguise. And that's the first principle I try to live by. Criminals first. The second one is never kill a mother or a child, regardless of the pay.
But what if you're wrong? If you kill an innocent?
That has happened before, and it will happen again. You see, I do not consider myself some kind of vigilante, some kind of judge. Ultimately, I know that I am what society would call a murderer, and that I do what I do for myself, above all else.
That's a lot to take in.
I know. Now tell me, Tahar, do you regret asking me this question? Knowing all this, do you think I'm a monster?
I don't think you're a monster, no. But I can't understand how you can choose to give in.
As I said, it's a matter of survival. But I understand why you would feel this way. Anyway, I would like some time for myself now. I hope you understand.
Tahar, it is good to see that you have recovered. This place and these people lack guidance without you.
They did?
Yes. The Lord Marshal tried to assume control, but as you might have expected, he did not have everybody's support. I was even fearing an internal power struggle, and I'm glad it did not come to that. I must say, Tahar, your mother, she is remarkable. I have always wondered what the Shapers look like, and now I do. It is fascinating. Though I suppose this is a difficult topic for you. Forgive me if my words were inappropriate.
All that matters is that we save her. We need to stop Lacane and get my mother's spirit back into her body.
Yes, this is our objective. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Yes? What is it?
I understand.
Yes, Corporal? Yes, Corporal? How can I help?
You said you know where we can find more allies.
Yes. I'll be brief. While you were asleep, an elven messenger came by. Varden Marilith, one of the Morhir scryers from Leafshade, sent him.
Marilith? What did he want?
Only that he needed your help. They, that is, he and a couple of his followers, seem to be somewhere deep in the Leafshade jungle, near the Halayish ruins.
All right. We might look into this.
We should. Is there anything else you wish to discuss, Tahar?
Yes? What is it?
So, Undergast, when you told me about your split with Lena, I got the feeling that you were more than just colleagues.
You are asking if we were in love. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Then let me start by telling you that the term love is undefined and that theories about it conflict one another. I have read a lot of books on it, and I've studied the poems, and I've come to the conclusion that it is ultimately a primitive, carnal urge that people have come to romanticize for the emotions that come with it. I, myself, never felt it, and maybe that was because I saw the underlying mechanisms. I always found it strange how people overreact so strongly to such a simple emotion, and maybe that very fact stopped me from being able to feel these emotions at all.
Well, what are the underlying mechanisms?
The desire to reproduce with a fitting mate. In fact, the orcs have a very dry, rational view on this process, but for some reason humans, dwarves, and elves do not.
Love is more than just that.
Well, most people would agree with you, and I'm certain that in your subjective experience it is.
So, what you're saying is that you were never able to feel love. But then Lena came along, and you did?
No, it was not that simple. What stood out in our relationship was that we connected. I've never felt that before. You see, Tahar, to me, the bonds people have always felt peculiar. And I am not like Yana. Her mind simply does not have the ability to feel these bonds anymore. She had them once, but then she lost them, as she became a dreamweaver. My brain is capable of feeling these things, but I am unable to connect with the outside world. I only have my own mind as a frame of reference. For example, when a person tells you yes, whereas he or she means no, you might be able to feel this discrepancy because you are able to empathize with her. I can't. To me, this person's distress would make no sense whatsoever. But then there was Lena. For some bizarre reason, she understood me and I understood her. Or at least, I thought that I did. It was as if this barrier, this shell that separates my mind from others, was pervious to her emotions. I know how strange it sounds, and I also have no explanation for why this was. Yet it changed me. All at once, I felt connected. Do you know this feeling, Tahar? You have traveled with these people for quite some time now. Is there anyone you were, well, fond of?
Not really. Why?
I see. Then you probably know how distracting such a feeling can be. To be honest, when I first became aware of that bond between Lena and me, I was horrified. I could not focus anymore. When I sat down to write my studies, I realized after hours that none of what I had written made sense at all.
What did Lena make of all that?
Nothing. Unlike me, she did not try to analyze, to understand its origin. At the same time, she did not discourage me from pondering. I believe this is what made our relationship unique. Complete acceptance. She did not try to tell me how I should behave or feel, and neither did I. Even when she decided to leave the guild and I decided to stay behind, we both accepted each other's decisions.
Am I right to assume that your relationship ended with your disagreement over the Creators Guild abandoning its neutrality?
No, you misunderstand. We never had a relationship. Although the feelings were mutual and we, well, acted on them, we never felt the need to bind ourselves to some close-minded societal construct. But yes, you are correct. It was the disagreement that broke our bond. Quietly, she left and never returned again.
How do you feel about this?
That is a good question. I still think about her, almost every day. But the more time passes, the more this entire episode starts to feel like a vague, distant dream, the way an elder must feel about youth. I do not know how I would feel if I ever saw her again.
I can imagine. Well, thank you for your trusting me with this, Undergast.
You have nothing to thank me for. If this conversation helped you get a better picture of me, I'm glad we had it. But there is one more thing I would like to ask you, Tahar.
Tell me.
Do you have regrets? Do you ever feel as if you could and should have acted differently than you did act?
Everybody has regrets.
That seems like a deliberately vague answer. It could indicate that you do have regrets, but it could also indicate that you do not have them. But I understand. If you do not want to share this with me, you do not have to. You see, I've never told you this, but I find your resilience to be remarkable.
How so?
Well, it is no secret that you have endured a lot of pain, especially your early childhood must have made a mark on your psyche. But still, you did not give up.
Well, I'm doing what I can.
I can see that. Either way, I think we have spent enough time talking. We should get back to the tasks at hand.
We should. So long, Undergast. regarding this rain you told me about, I
want to talk about it. I'm not supposed to, but I don't know. I trust you, Tahar, and I've kept silent about this for far too long. Zarek's fangs, this is so silly. I feel like a damn child.
Gore, just spit it out already.
Right. Where do I start? Before becoming a shaman, every disciple has to go through a trial. The Iron Trial, as it's called. I told you that I did most of my training in solitude, didn't I? That wasn't true. 5 years after I entered disciplehood, another orc was accepted by my elder. A female named Rain. She was 2 years younger than me.
How did you get along?
Well, at first, I was a complete dick to her. I was jealous and feared for my position. However, she never took offense by it. She fired back at me when I got childish, but at the same time never lowered herself to my level. As the years went by, we became friends. And no, there was no courting or mating involved, if that's what you're thinking. She was more like a sister to me, and one who, unlike my true kin, understood me. Those years in the Orcish steppes, they were special. We spent days, weeks out in the wild, doing whatever our elder tasked us with. And though it was hard, there was beauty in that. We just had this connection between us, this trust.
But something happened. Am I right?
Yeah, the trial did. The sacred test every disciple has to take before he or she can become a shaman. Our elder sent us both at the same time, which was unusual. But of course I was relieved. There was plenty of talk about the Iron Trial, and I was scared.
What did you know about the trial?
Rumors. Shamans are forbidden to talk about it. But it was known that only half of those who take it return at all.